Okay, Spielberg, Klein, Penn, get out of my brain! Yeah, you can imagine my shock and surprise when right after I post my book review, I go see the movie and practically everything that I did not like about the book, the movie fixed it. And now I had an absolute blast watching this movie. Now, the first go around, I admit, I was like, because on one side, yes, I was really enjoying all the references. I love the Easter eggs hidden in the background. I was looking for them as much as I'm sure a lot of other people will when they start watching this movie. But for me, the major thing which had me going nuts was the fact that all of my grievances about the book, if they weren't done exactly the way I would hope they'd have been done, they found some way to still bring it forward and make it work. And now Ready Player One is the geek-centric sci-fi epic that, frankly, I would have wanted it to be. Now, I'm already seeing a lot of purists going like, oh no, they ruined it. Knowing what I know about the necessity of an adaptation to make things much more visual, Ernest Cline, you struck gold when you landed Spielberg to direct this movie. A lot of the things that weren't working for me, specifically stuff like the relationship between Parzival and Artemis, they build on that so much more here. When I said that there wasn't that many stakes in the real world because all the climax took place in the Oasis, fixed. Absolutely fixed. All the time that there was stuff happening in the Oasis, there was stuff happening in the real world. And I was tug-of-war between two really wild and intense moments. And I was absolutely riveted by it. But the thing that actually got me on the verge of tears with joy was specifically James Halliday and the nature of the contest itself. Even when I was reading it, I was like, this is it? This is what we're staking an entire commodity on? Just a game of joust? The movie, on the other hand, has all the challenges reflect James Halliday and who he was as a person and reflecting his biggest regrets, and it all culminates in this beautiful, poignant message. The message, which frankly I think should have been hit home a hell of a lot harder in the book, they make that message go front and center, and you actually feel the characters being profoundly changed by it. And the best part is it's not just Parzival. All of these characters actually feel profoundly changed because of the lessons being taught by this contest. In the book, Parzival doesn't really get to meet his five, the high five, until like the latter fifth of the book. And I was kind of sad about that because, yeah, even though we did get a camaraderie with them in the Oasis, you didn't really get to know who they were as people. You just had a general description from Wade when he describes what they look like in real life. In the end, he was still focusing on them as their characters as they were in the Oasis. I didn't get any kind of emotional attachment to them. When throughout the entire time reading the book, I was going, yes, I want to know you more. Well, the movie actually gave us a chance to get to know them. Yes, we see their avatars and we really get to see how cool they are. But the movie really jumps into wanting us to get to know them in the real world. And as a result, I loved all the characters now. When we got to the final climax, it really did feel like they were a unit together. I'm going to avoid spoiling what got changed from the book. For book fans, just so you can be surprised, but even people who didn't like the book, like myself, I want you to be surprised. I actually encourage people who didn't like the book to actually go see this movie especially. Now, getting into the minutiae of the film, specifically like the way the movie's made and all that good stuff, Spielberg was definitely the right man for the job, like all the action sequences in the Oasis. Now, yeah, I was in the mindset it's in the Oasis, I shouldn't feel anything. But one thing I really liked is that they really hit home the stakes of what happens when your avatar gets killed. They took full advantage of the fact it's in a fantasy world, and it was a rush all the way through. And for Spielberg, I got the vibe that he was employing a lot of the techniques that he learned when he made Tintin, which for my money is one of Spielberg's most underrated movies. He applied all that to Ready Player One, and the best part is about Ready Player One is that because it takes place in a fantasy realm, they were really able to just go, physics be damned, and that was a thrill. But then they juxtapose it with stuff that's happening in the real world. That's the stuff I'm not going to spoil because the book didn't have any stakes in the real world. Whatever credit I can give to Ernest Cline, I have the feeling that he really wanted this to be a movie. Even when I was reading the book, I felt like he wanted this to be a movie first before anything else, but had to default on making this a book. because a lot of the things that maybe he was shooting for in the book that he just wasn't able to develop to its peak, he brought out here, specifically the central moral of the necessity of interconnectivity in the real world. They hit that home so well, and the best part is they use the central character of James Halliday to hit that home. And because all the characters are following the breadcrumbs laid by Halliday in order for them to come to this revelation, the final epilogue of what the High Five do felt so perfect. While yes, it wasn't the ending that I would have gone with, the one that I said in my book review, at the same time, the whole core point of the story is still very much present here in this ending. Now, as for the final page of the book, which, like I said, just came completely out of left field, the movie, on the other hand, gives us a much more realistic take on the ending. He still comes to the conclusion that the Oasis really needs to be moderated, that people can't rely on it, but he changes it to something else, which reminds us that people are still going to kind of want to hang out in the Oasis. It is still a wonderful thing. The idea of people connecting with each other around the world is a good thing. With our obsession with social media, it's become something of a crutch. People are more willing to just on their phones as opposed to actually going out and seeing each other. Now, the idea of communicating with someone out in the outside world and then maybe form a bond and a friendship so good that they actually go out of their way to meet each other, that's the point. That's why we do social media. And that's why we want to connect with people from around the world, for the hopefully inevitable time that we get to meet them in the real world. And the best part is about this movie is that we get the best of both worlds in the ending. I'm not going to spoil the nature of how it ends, but I'm going to say I felt so emotionally fulfilled by what they did for this movie. The cast was pretty appropriately chosen. I was a bit reluctant about Ty Sheridan in lieu of my compliments for him for his performance in X-Men Apocalypse, but nevertheless, once I jumped in and once I saw him in the world, I had no problem with him after that. The thing I got to give to him is that he wasn't just doing one performance. He wasn't just playing Wade Watts. He was in the Oasis playing Parzival. And the thing I got to notice is that when he's in the real world, he is more timid. He is more reluctant. And you can see why he gets into the Oasis, because when you see Parzival and when you see how dynamic he is and how wild he is, you can see why he's so addicted to it. Now, I also said in my book review, Artemis was my favorite character. If there's any character who the movie really did justice to, it was definitely her, but they did stuff with her even more so in this one that really made her my favorite character in the bunch. And when you meet her in real life, when you find out her whole story, and even when you find out what she's been up to in the real world, and of her, all of her goals in the Oasis, everything that happens to her in the climax, you're cheering for and you're raising your fist for. When you get to meet all the other friends, H, Shoto, and Daito, once again, all fun. Really, by and large, none of the performances really blew my mind. The things that stay with us are not the performances of the actors. It's just the way he utilized the actors to bring the characters out. And I think that's where the movie succeeds completely. Though I gotta say, if there was a performance that elevated a character, particularly one that I had on such a low regard, it's Ben Mendelsohn as Sorrento. In the book, he's basically just a mouthpiece for a big organization, but the movie actually wanted to focus on showing how truly pathetic he was from the get-go. And then when you take someone who's really pathetic and elevate him to the level he is, it's hilarious seeing how thoroughly ridiculous he is, and also how they hit home that this guy really doesn't deserve the egg. He doesn't deserve any of this because he doesn't understand. And the movie does a really good job hitting home why he doesn't understand. He did a really good job carving an identity for him. I admit, watching Ben Mendelsohn, there was a little bit of a Krennic-y vibe to him, but that kind of gets washed away because I think a lot of it is because they show him in the Oasis a lot, and he kind of reminded me of Chairman Drek from Ratchet and Clank, except in a more human form, and that was great. And I actually really loved his interactions with IROC, played by T.J. Miller. The great thing about IROC is that you don't even see him in the real world, which I will say his avatar is very impressive. To hear T.J. Miller's voice coming out of this really imposing avatar was hilarious, and he made for a great henchman character. In the book, he's a very minor character, but they elevated IROC to a henchman consultant character to Sorrento, and it was great. In conclusion, for me, for myself, for a person who really wasn't a big fan of the book, the movie was everything that I felt the story should have been, and even more so. I got what pretty much fans would want to see in a movie that's all about pop culture references and stuff, but I didn't feel saddled by all the things that I felt saddled with when I was trying to slog my way through the book. Ready Player One, the book, gets a Narcotic Casserole rating of... Meanwhile, Ready Player One, the movie, gets... Do you agree? Do you disagree? I'm pretty sure you're going to do one or the other. Leave it in the comments below, and for more addictive content on Narcotic Casserole, simply like, share, subscribe, click, thou shalt be served.